board members who are present, please respond. Mr. Sturtevant? Here. Ms. Gray? Mr. Bourne? Here. Mrs. Larson? Mrs. Taylor? Mrs. Harris Muhammad?
Present.
Mr. Coleman? Dr. Jones? Mrs. Pinckney absent. We've been joined by our student Grace Zipperer, and you do have a quorum, Madam Vice Chair.
Thank you. Okay. Welcome, Grace.
Thank you for having me.
I'm gonna read a little bio that we have on you. Grace, do you live in the 4th district? Where do you live?
Southside Forest Hill.
That's what I thought. I represent your area.
Oh, thank
so,
you.
Welcome. We're excited you're here. Grace Zipperer is a senior at Richmond Community High School and is a leader. She possesses a 4.56 GPA and is ranked number 4 in her class. She has proven to be among the very best at Richmond Community by taking an extremely challenging program of study that includes only honors or AP core classes. Grace has been very involved and committed to participating in extracurricular activities at Richmond Community and in our city. She holds membership and sits in leadership positions in several school organizations. She has served as the mayor of school council for the past 2 years and has held membership on the council for 3 consecutive years. She's also an officer in National Honor Society, Future Business Leaders of America, and the senior class. She is a member of our prestigious 1600 plus SAT Club and Mu Alpha Theta Mathematics National Honor Society. Grace has completed over 100 hours of community service at local nonprofit agencies in the city of Richmond since enrolling as a 9th grader. She has volunteered at Blackwell Elementary and Westover Hills Preschool Center. She has also assisted disabled children at Camp Baker. Grace has demonstrated she's intelligent, hardworking, committed, and friendly. She accepts criticism well and is able to work in a subordinate position. She is also able to command respect and lead others. She is a young lady that staff and students at Richmond Community trust and admire. She is an ideal candidate for the honorary seat of Richmond City School Board for the month of April. Thank you for joining us, Grace. We're happy you're here. Ms. Lewis?
The next item on the agenda is public information. I do not have anyone who signed up in advance. What is your pleasure, Madam Vice Chair?
Madam Chair, can we get the clerk's mic turned up a little bit? It's hard to hear. Turn the mic.
Can you, is that better?
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, public information for individuals, 3 minutes, and for groups, 5 minutes. So if you have comments you'd like to offer, please line up at the podium.
Good evening. My name is Tom Hartman. I'm speaking as an individual. I apologize for what I'm about to do. I'm about to repeat myself on 2 items. And this is only because I promised my colleagues that I would. The first item is the 5 additional staff hours a week for free. I've had trouble getting people to wake up to this. They have just looked at me like, Mr. Hartman, you're crazy, that can't be true, and they just haven't paid any attention, but they're finally starting to really speak about this. And it's not making sense to any of us. So I just want to remind you that several months ago I started with the analogy of a donut factory, where they call the staff in and say, you're going to do 5 overtime hours a week for free because we need more donuts. No, that's not computing for people. So I request that either it be explained or withdrawn. The second item is the new schedule for next year in terms of arrival and dismissal. I've already mentioned this, but again, I promised that I would mention it again, that the proposal, about which there were a number of hearings, was Plan A. We had no idea there was a Plan B, so when Plan A got comments on Plan A, Plan B was simply put in place. And that's, I'm just saying, good or bad, that has my colleagues disturbed. Several of them think that it's just not going to work. So, that's it.
I'm a little short. Can you hear? Thank you. Madam Vice President and school board members, good evening. Good evening. Better?
Yes.
My name is Ingrid C. Higgins, and I am an RPS first grade teacher at Fairfield Court Elementary School. We are asking for your support and consideration and an abundance of resources to do our job. Use our intelligence, wisdom, sensitivity, kindness, and material things to make it possible for us to nurture the tender children into stable adults who will lead our nation, transform many of the buds into beautiful flowers, and produce bright colors of happiness, and have those who may encounter them, each one of them receive the tools to teach them to be creative, to produce and develop their individual personal success in the world. We need your arms around us who give so much of ourselves in teaching our youth to strive to grow into responsible and productive citizens. We love, soothe, and use all of our strength to teach the children in our care when we have given so much of ourselves. We love our profession and admire those who strive to and are seeking to do the same. We are the special people who hold the children we teach and their future in our hands. Thank you.
Madam Clerk, next item on the agenda.
The next item is item 3, academic improvement. 3.01, receive an update from the Career and Technical Education Commission.
It doesn't appear that they're here, so let's move to the next item on the agenda. If the
Okay.
board's okay with that. Yes. If they come back, we'll come back to it. Okay.
The next item is 3.02, receive the annual exceptional education plan.
Good afternoon. I believe Ms. Brent is going to pull up the attachments. I'll be very brief. In the exceptional education plan, that is our application for federal special education dollars to supplement the local and state monies that are afforded to us for the provision of services to students with disabilities. In your Friday report that you received prior to your lovely spring break, you received the actual application as well as a PowerPoint presentation that highlighted some key elements. One key element that is different from what you've seen in the past is that we have voluntarily set aside some funds to provide early intervening services to general education students who are at risk for referral for special education evaluation and services. In short, we have put money aside for 2 FTEs that previously would have supported students with disabilities to work with academic and behavioral skills for some of our students who may be referred through our Child Study Intervention Program. Do you have any questions about the information that you've reviewed relative to the annual plan that you would like me to address in detail?
Mr. Sturdivant?
Is there any fiscal impact beyond what the typical funding is?
So generally, we're going to be level funded. We did receive a preliminary report from BDOE pretty much saying that we will be funded relatively similar to what we were last year, which is a little over $5.5 million. And one of the things, we will have some carryover funds that will help support the gap between what we actually need for staffing and what we're going to be awarded, all things remaining neutral. And that information we shared previously, anticipating the gap that we will be able to meet the gap this year with carryover, but do anticipate that we'll need to make some changes for the following fiscal year to support the current FTEs that are in the flow through account.
Ms. Gray? 2 questions. One is relative to the language has changed. This has been a long time coming, but it's talking about disproportionate representation of students in special education, and that there is an actual effort to reduce the numbers, which I've never heard in the past. So I just wanted to know a little bit of, about that. Sure. The other question I have is around, I was asked a question about monies that were returned to the state, and the one pocket that stood out to me the most was a parent resource grant, and we returned the entire amount to the state. So what are we doing to assist parents and to make sure that they have information and resources to assist them when they're going through special education processes?
Sure. So I'll answer the second part first. We did apply for a number of little mini grants, if you will, last year. Unfortunately, we did have a lot of change in staff turnover, and so while we were able to apply for the grants, we didn't have the human capital to implement them. And as you know, with grant application, you really need to adhere closely, very closely to what you included in your application. One of the things that we targeted for the Parent Resource Center that was previously eliminated through a reduction in force, we wanted to have someone who had special education knowledge and background, but also had that personal experience of having a child or a grandchild as a student with disabilities, so they could see things through the lens of a parent, but also have the knowledge. While we did post the position for the Parent Resource Center at least 2 times, we were not able to find someone who had the endorsement in special education and also had a child with a disability. So we did return those funds to the State Department because we did not want to deviate from what we not only had the support from our Special Education Advisory Committee locally, that was something that they were very passionate about, but wanted to make sure that what we implemented would be in alignment. So we did return that. Again, we do no longer have a Parent Resource Center, but we do have specialists that are attached to each school, and so if parents have questions, they can certainly contact the specialist or their special ed designees at the school. We do have a preschool intake team that really works closely with families, particularly for those youngsters who are referred at a young age, and their parents may be very, the process in and of itself may be inundating and very new. And so they do work closely with the families to explain the process. We have different resources on the website, but they're able to ask those questions there. The first question that you asked, and Ms. Gray brought up a good point. So the coordinated early intervening services that we've identified, while we haven't been required this year to allocate a certain amount of funds for disproportionality, based on our preliminary data, we do believe that we will have to next year. And what that means, and I can give you specific numbers, but for example, for our African American males with emotional disabilities, African American males are 6 times more likely to be identified as a student with an emotional disability than any other male in our division. And so we're tracking those numbers, and that's why we're doing professional development around cultural competence, around access to literacy and things like that, so that some of the environmental factors don't lead students to be inappropriately found for special education, particularly under certain categories like emotional disabilities, other health impairment, and learning disabilities. And so there's some additional information that you'll get down the pipe, but we wanted to go ahead and attack that now because in looking at our data internally, we see that that's an area of need, and that's something that's going to be in our special education corrective action plan as well.
Are there going to be regular reports that kind of track that so that we could?
So one of the things that we're developing now, we're going to submit to the state by the end of the month, is an eligibility determination corrective action plan. Some things that are compliance issues related, anything that's compliance issues has to be corrected within a year. Anything that's accountability driven, we have up to 3 years to address. Again, the professional development and looking at things, some of that's going to take some time to build capacity back through and to have folks understand language deficits, standard English versus some of the language that's used in our communities. And so that is a professional development, but I'm happy to share updates with you. I can share our preliminary risk ratios for each of our disability categories with you as well, just so that you have a better understanding of where we're going and where we are now.
Mr. Boyd?
Thank you, Dr. Boyd. What, if anything, are we doing in an enhanced way or a better way this year rather than last year? I'm speaking just specifically as the provision of these services to this category of student.
So our big push this year has been on least restrictive environment. We have worked at almost every assistant principals meeting, every principals meeting, every compliance meeting, on talking with principals and our other special ed leaders about really trying to educate students in general ed settings to the greatest degree appropriate. Because in that case, you have a content specialist as well as a strategy specialist, the special ed teacher if needed. So we've done a lot on looking at the data and where it's gotten us thus far, and it hasn't gotten us the optimal outcomes with students with disabilities being educated in self-contained settings. And so we've been working very, very closely with them on that. And so we hope to see a very huge turn in that for our upcoming school year. Naturally, that's going to kind of dovetail into what I was sharing with Ms. Gray, our plan of attack on looking at LRA connected to academic achievement, because the two are married.
Thank you.
And I will be sure to provide you all with updates via our Friday report. We'll also be happy to bring additional information formally to the board at your will.
Dr. Boyd, do you need the board to take action on this?
You're not slated to take action, I believe, until the next board meeting. This is for your review. If you have any questions in the interim, please feel free to follow up with me. I can sit down and go through it more closely with you, but our numbers in terms of the plan look pretty similar to the past, with the exception of that one piece that I talked about with our providing some supports to general ed students.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Lewis, can you make sure this is on the agenda? Okay, thank you. All right, next item.
The next item is item 4, your board actions. 4.01, receive for action the 2015-16 school calendar.
Dr. Bed?
Previously received two versions of the calendar. As you recall, the AIP originally had a calendar that had 9 additional professional development days. As part of the budget reduction process, the board decreased those to 196 days. This item was originally tabled, waiting for the response from the mayor's office with the budget. At this point in time, we're at a point where we need to provide some direction about what the start date would be for employees next school year. So you should have 2 calendars, one with 196 days, which is 5 more than currently, and 4 less than the original plan, 9 professional development days at AIP, and then you also have a traditional 191-day calendar. So you need to take action on approving one of those so we can tell employees what the work calendar is going to look like next year.
Mr. Bourne?
Thank you. I think we're still several weeks off from exactly knowing what our funding situation actually is. Ms. Kane?
I'm here to answer questions if you have any.
But I think it's incumbent upon us to do exactly what Dr. Bedman suggests here, which is give people the most advanced notice they can about start dates, about what their work calendar looks like, and so I would move that we recommend approval of the proposed 196 workday calendar consistent with what was in the academic improvement plan, obviously as modified by our budget proposal that was sent to the committee.
Mr. Sturdivant?
Dr. Ben, you just explained the two things that we have posted on board docs, so I've been a little bit slow picking up on that, but one.
Can you speak into your mic?
How's that? One of the calendars says draft 5 teacher PD days, and the other says draft 191 teacher days. And you just explained it, and it didn't process with me. Do you mind just explaining that real quickly again, please?
Sure. So the 191, that's what teachers normally would work, so that would be sort of the original type of calendar. And the other 5 days is the 5 professional development days, so 2 different.
Gotcha. So the 191 is what is like the calendar we have right now?
Exactly.
This current year. Okay.
Just updating for next.
Right. And then the 5 teacher PD days, those are extra paid days, is that right?
That is the
Pending
intent.
the approval of the budget.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yep.
Okay. Thank you.
Ms. Gray?
Okay, I'm not sure. Did Jeff get a second? Okay. To approve the 196-day calendar. Yeah, with the 5 professional development days. I'm wondering if we can't approve it pending funding, and then if we need to change it, it will be less days, so it may be less.
If you approve it pending funding, and then you changed it effectively, then you can start later, so it'll be less days.
Right, so, I mean, would that be feasible for you all if we said we want to go with the 196-day calendar, but not unless we can compensate? So people plan for the 196, and then we adjust it based on where the budget lands.
If that's your desire, it could work.
Ms. Gray? Is that a friendly amendment that you're offering?
That is, I mean, I don't think there's a motion that's been approved.
That's true. She was saying that the calendar is approved for 196 days pending funding.
Madam Chair, I had a comment.
Okay.
Question. I guess I wonder if we approve this tonight, and whether it's pending funding or not, does that potentially cause issues of having one calendar out there that may need to be changed down the road, and if that causes challenges with adequate communication? Because if it has to be scaled back to 3 days, or 1 day, or 4 days.
Right.
Does
Dr. Benton or Ms. Kane, what are your thoughts?
Yes, I'm trying to process your question, Mr. Sturgeon, when you say create problems.
I guess I'm just wondering if we can wait until the budget is approved to then be able to issue a finalized calendar. Because this will go out, people will start making summer and childcare plans, and I just wonder if even if it says draft and even if it says pending funding, whether or not that may cause some hiccups in terms of communication.
There are teachers in the audience, but I would say if planning on 5 more days and starting work earlier, and knowing that is better than waiting to the last minute if I didn't plan to come back at a certain time. So I see it as potentially a problem the other way. So I think Mrs. Gray's question was, if that's the board's desire to make it pending funding, it's easier to have them come later than it is to say come earlier and I didn't plan it. Is that just a...
So going back to the motion.
Yeah, I would like to move that we approve the 196-day calendar pending funding from City Council, and we scale it back according to where we are with the budget.
Because we can post both calendars, I mean, so that teachers have both calendars, you know, the information. The school year doesn't change for the students, it does change for the teachers, obviously, but I see no harm in posting both and explaining what the situation is. It's pending budget approval.
I think Dr. Ben's here in front of the REA rep, which would be good before we move forward. While he's doing that, I do have a question about the bike race. Are we still planning on operating that week?
So the official word, I don't think has come yet. We've been getting bits of information. I do believe that for the most part will be, oh, you had a meeting? Okay, good, perfect.
Because that's still on the calendar too. Not to get off topic, I just wanted to give them time.
We've looked at the bike race, and with the exception of Friday at one school, we'll be able to operate on a normal schedule.
Okay, awesome.
Okay.
So I think Dr. Ben just shared with me that our REA representative says it would be better to go with the longer calendar if that's what we're planning and scale it back so that people can plan. So I would like to motion that we put forward a motion that we approve the 196-day calendar pending the ability to compensate for those additional days. Can I get a second?
Second. I have a quick question.
Okay, Ms. Harris Mohammed.
I just wanted to know from Mr. Krantz what school will be impacted. You can say it from right there. That's all I need. I just needed to know this.
They'll do on Friday.
Okay.
Because it goes right by the school. So we work with the police. We can get the students in and out of the building. Literally be a little bit of a disruption.
Okay. Thank you.
And just right, and just for your information, we're working with the Children's Museum and some other places to do some full-day field trips so that they're still engaged in learning activities during the day.
All right. So we have a motion. We have a second.
The motion was made by Ms. Gray, seconded by Ms. Harris Muhammad to approve the 196-day calendar pending funding from City Council and scale it back depending on the budget. Mr. Sturdivant?
Yes.
Ms. Gray?
Yes.
Mr. Bourne? Yes. Ms. Harris Muhammad?
Yes.
Mrs. Larson?
Yes.
Motion passes 5-0. The next item is to 4.02, receive for action and human resources actions.
Receive for action the recommendation. There were a nomination for 18 employees for hire, 3 for a change of contract. And then for your information, only There's a resignation of 8 employees, a retirement of 5 employees, the unfortunate death of 1 employee, and the change in name of 1 employee. So, submit this for your approval.
So moved.
Second.
The motion was made by Mr. Sturdivant and seconded by Mr. Bourne to approve the human resources actions as presented. Mr. Sturdivant?
Yes.
Ms. Gray?
Yes.
Mr. Bourne?
Yes.
Ms. Harris Mohammed?
Yes.
Mrs. Larson?
Yes.
Motion passes 5-0. The next item is 4.03, receive for action budget transfers.
Betsy, Mr. West Bay is probably at the council budget meeting, so Ms. Drury is here to answer any questions you may have.
Happy to answer any questions you have regarding the transfers.
Mr. Bourne?
Tell me a little bit more about what temporary services we are purchase.
Risk management? Yes, sir. We currently have a vacancy and have had a vacancy. The risk manager position has been vacant all year. We have engaged temporary services to fill that spot. So we need to transfer salary and benefits, budgeted dollars, to the professional services line to cover those costs.
Mr. Sturdivant?
It's not an enormous amount of money, but $5,000 transfer for from equipment replacement to staff development at one of the elementary schools.
Yes, sir. That
Is it just a missed budgeting issue, or?
The principal, I'm not sure of the exact complement of staff development that principal wanted to engage in, but they had available funds in the equipment replacement line that they had not expended, so therefore, I guess they want to take advantage. I can certainly find out and let you know.
It's not a huge deal, it's just
Okay.
$5,000 from, that could go replace some equipment looks
Right.
like they maybe misbudgeted the grant or something, that maybe something we want to look into so it doesn't happen.
Madam Chair, I don't have any further. Which school is that?
Westover Hills.
Can you make sure Dr. Leonard's at doctor's appointment and he knows that we can follow?
All right, do you need us approval on this?
Yes,
Okay,
ma'am.
all right, anybody want to make a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Motion has been made by Ms. Gray, seconded by Ms. Harris Mohammed to approve the budget transfers. Mr. Sturdivant?
Yes.
Ms. Gray?
Yes.
Mr. Bourne?
Yes.
Mrs. Harris Mohammed?
Yes.
Mrs. Larson?
Yes.
Motion passes 5-0. The next item on the agenda is the consent agenda, and it's the approval of the minutes of February 5th, 2014, February 18th, 2014, February 19th, and 24th, April 7th, April 21st, May 5th, June 30th, July 14th, 2014, January 5th, March 7th, and March 17th of 2015, and all of those minutes were distributed to you. They were also posted. I have not received any edits or changes, and I just ask that they be approved at this time.
So moved.
Second.
Consensus. All right, thank you.
Thanks.
The next item is item 6, other informational items. These items have been posted to the board docs for your review, and it's the Martin Luther King school year-round update, the proposed summer school schedule, and the science textbook adoption for middle and high schools.
Madam Chair, Ms. Keene is here just to, if anyone has any questions.
Okay. And if I remember correctly, Dr. Madden, we have these as informational items, and then they'll be up on the next agenda for approval, some of them?
Yes.
Okay, textbooks?
So textbooks, yes, exactly. But you have all of the information, the MLK information, the summer school schedule. You've seen that a couple of weeks ago as well.
Okay. All right. Mr. Sturdivant?
Just thank you for the clarifying. Is there an estimated time when the year-round school would be implemented?
So the thinking is, because we have undergone a number of meetings and proposed changes for MLK for next year, that 15-16 would not be an optimal time to begin that.
Will there be a recommendation at some point that it either happen or not happen, or that?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, so when we do the full board presentation, we will make our recommendation at that point.
Any sense of when that might be?
We're ready. We can schedule for next board meeting or whenever you do for agenda setting.
Thank you.
Mr. Warren?
Thank you. Assuming the recommendation is to move forward on year-round school, I guess just talk to me very briefly about, I guess I get intellectually why if we're having other changes at MLK, we wouldn't push forward on this. However, it seems to me that if you're making changes this year, and why wouldn't we just make all the changes that we want to make at one time, so there's not a disruption this year, and a disruption next year, if in fact anybody would consider them disruptions.
You know, I don't believe that this was projected to move as far forward as it has. So the process began last spring. So lots of information, the surveys and the community forums and all those kinds of things. That started last year. As we embarked upon this school year, and there were some other challenges, some action needed to be taken in a timely manner. So at that point, we've been meeting with the principal and with the teachers, and some things have gotten started because they needed to for the current changes. But at that time, we were not prepared with the information for the year-round school. So it was a bit disjointed. Leadership did change on the committees. So some folks sort of got involved midstream, and that took a little bit of time to get going. So there was a little bit of a gap between what the current needs are and what the projected needs are.
Any other questions for Ms. King? Okay, thank you. Okay. It is 5:15, and we're very ahead of schedule. Is the CTE commission here yet? Okay. And earlier we held public comments. But we only had a couple people, and so if there's anybody else who wants to give public comments and missed the time period earlier, talk now. So, board members, we're gonna go into close then.
Pursuant to section 2.2-3711A1 of the Code of Virginia 1950 amended, I move that the school board of the city of Richmond go into closed session to consider and discuss the assignment, performance, and disciplining specific employees of the school board in employee matters 1415-42 and 1415-43.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? You are now enclosed.
We're
Right, so we can say still no.
Hey, Dr.
I just want to make sure we're on the same page.
And
It wouldn't be as eloquent as next week. On the 20th, it'd be better. Yeah. I'll send it. I can't, so she said that's good. She says, as long as they see it, that's fine.
She has our support.
Okay, it's online. Okay, so I got that. So we need to put it on.
appropriate for video, or not? Or can somebody just throw that on? All right, can somebody read us out a close?
I move that the Richmond School Board direct its clerk to call for a roll call vote of the board members that, to the best of each member's knowledge, one, only public business matters lawfully exempted from open meeting requirements by Virginia law were discussed in the closed meeting to which this certification applies, and two, only such public business matters as were identified in the motion convening the closed meeting were heard, discussed, or considered by the Richmond School Board.
Second.
Mr. Sturtevant?
Yes.
Ms. Gray?
Yes.
Mr. Warren?
Yes.
Mrs. Harris Muhammad?
Yes.
Mrs. Larson?
Yes.
You're now in open session. Your first item is to uphold the recommendation of the hearing officer for termination in employee matter 141542. Is there a motion? Is there a second?
Second.
The motion was made by Mr. Warren and seconded by Ms. Harris Muhammad to uphold the recommendation of the hearing officer for termination in employee matter 141542. Mr. Sturtevant?
Yes.
Ms. Gray? Mr. Boone?
Yes.
Mrs. Harris Muhammad?
Yes.
Mrs. Larson?
Yes.
Motion passes 5-0. The next matter is to modify the recommendation of the hearing officer for termination in employee matter 141543 to a 10-day suspension without pay and additional training.
So moved.
Second.
The motion was made by Ms. Harris Muhammad, seconded by Mr. Sturtevant, to modify the recommendation of the hearing officer for termination in employee matter 141543 to a 10-day suspension without pay and additional training.
Mr. Warren?
Can we just add to that, after the initial training, that direction, she discusses.
Yes. Definitely amendment.
So the motion now reads, to modify the recommendation of the hearing officer for termination in employee matter 141543 to 10 days suspension without pay and additional training at the direction or supervision of the Chief of Safety and Security. Mr. Sturtevant?
Yes.
Ms. Gray?
Yes.
Mr. Boone?
Yes.
Mrs. Harris Muhammad?
Yes.
Mrs. Larson?
No.
Motion passes 4-1.
At this point, the second part of our meeting will start at 6:30, and that's going to be the Facilities Task Force presentation. So the board is going to recess until that time.
No, they left it there, they're coming back.
report to the podium. Thomas Brains, please report to the podium. Mr. Reed, would you please send Tommy Krebs to the office? He's here for a pickup. His parents are here for a pickup.
I was gonna come out and get y'all back.
Oh, okay.
That is wrong. Otherwise your ice cream was in downstairs.
Yes. Me and him were stretched out on Wilson Street.
Mr. Moore, that was really bad. Mr. Gardner, can you report to the front, please? Yeah,
session started, Madam Chair.
Mr. Sturdivant? We're going to reconvene our meeting, and at this point, we're scheduled to receive the Facilities Task Force presentation. Since I'm co-chair of that task force, I'm going to yield the chair seat to Mr. Bourne and let him run the rest of the meeting. Okay, so we're going to go out in the audience and put the screen down and run through the presentation.
Good, how are you, man? You know where Mopox? You know? Yeah, they're right next to the schoolhouse. Yeah. Okay. No worries. Yes, go ahead.
I saw.
Anything actually.
So we'll get started here. Does anybody need translation services at this point?
Si alguien necesita intérprete en español, por favor, levante su mano.
So the book that you have in front of you, and we have more copies of this, but this is the result of a lot of individuals that were involved in this process. It wasn't a one-person show. Some of the parties that were involved in this were the Facilities Task Force. That Facilities Task Force consisted of RPS, community leaders, community members, and RPS administrators. The community leaders, we had 2 school board members, as well as a city council person that attended the majority of our meetings and were actively involved in the process, as well as individuals from the city administration. We used Crawford GIS, who assisted us in our forecasting of our enrollments. They've done the work before, as well as Dr. McKibben, who is the demographer that did the work in 2007. BCWH architects that did the assessment of all schools back in 2002, 2007, and then we brought that forward to today. And then K-12 Insight, who assisted us in the development of the customer survey. So you can see it's a wide range of individuals, constituents, and people that were involved in the creation of the report that you're going to see tonight. The objective that was simply laid out was with the committee is that we wanted to develop a plan that was more than just the traditional approach of looking at student enrollment and kind of an assessment of the facilities. It also added community input. What was going on at the real estate level? What was going on within the communities? What was the long-term future for the city? And the whole intent was, let's get an assessment of the facilities as they are today, where our enrollments were projected to be, and see how that matches up with those assets to best serve the students of the Richmond Public School System. We divided up into 4 subcommittees in our process. Subcommittee 1 focused on our baseline. Our baseline focused on primarily the new schools, the 2 elementary, the 2 middle, and the new high school. The planning and projections was subcommittee number 2, and we focused there on where our student projected enrollments were going to be. Survey subcommittee 3 focused on getting customer input, getting it from the community, which we did through the survey. And then subcommittee 4, which will really begin their work now, once we have the recommendations that you'll see, they can start working on developing, how do you pay for all this? And there's some challenges in that. One of the biggest things when you look at our facilities and from a district standpoint and school system standpoint is what is the capacity of a building? And a building has lots of different capacities. Here's two: the RPS functional number and the RPS maximum number. There's also a state maximum number. And all three will give different numbers depending on how I compute for that classroom the maximum number of students that will be in that room. We utilize the RPS functional because what it does is it gives us the greatest flexibility to meet the needs of the students of Richmond Public Schools. We ideally want to be at 85 to 90% of that number, but as you can see, it's less than what the RPS maximum number is, and it's less than what the state max is. If you take, and this is an actual elementary school, the enrollment as of October 1st of this year, that particular school on an RPS functional basis needs 16 classrooms. It's right there. If I do it on an RPS maximum basis, that's 14 classrooms. That difference of 2 classrooms means I either have 44 additional students or I have an additional 50 extra students. If I go with the state maximum, that additional 2 classrooms could equal 60 maximum students. So you can see that depending on what measurement I use to compute the capacity has a significant impact on what that number is. The point is that when we look at capacity, it's very easy to look at a number on a piece of paper and say, that's the Bible. That's it. Take it to the bank. And you can't do that. What you have to do on a capacity standpoint is look at it on a school by school, grade by grade, and program by program basis. It's only going through that analysis that you really calculate what's the true capacity of the school. And it will change year to year. So just because you do that exercise today, that's not the capacity necessarily for next year, depending on the student population and the program needs that school does. There's been a lot of discussion about how many empty seats the school system has today. The numbers that have been thrown around are 5,700 on a functional, 9,300 on a RPS maximum, and it's well in excess of 10,000 on a state maximum. We, as I told you, use the functional numbers. There's a middle school today, just to show you how this works, that has 450 students in a building that has 49 classrooms. That particular school is using 48 of the 49 classrooms. So they would tell you they're at full capacity. That particular school at one point had over 1,300 students in the building. So we utilize the functional. We think this is the best approach. And what you see through our numbers is that off of our projection in 5 years, our seats are going empty from 5,190 to 4,475 down to 3,798. We see projected growth in elementary, middle, and high, and we're flat in our specialty schools. Specialty schools focus on open, community, Franklin, and the Richmond Alternative School. Now, it's real simple now to say that in the elementary schools, just looking at this schedule, that the elementaries as a whole need more schools. The middle says kind of the same thing. Yet when we peel back that onion, that's not what it really tells us. Since 2005, as we'll see in a second, the school system in the city has actually closed 17 schools, eliminated 1 million square feet of space, and 6,681 seats. In that time, we've opened 4 new schools, which added 575,000 square feet of space and 3,700 seats, for a net reduction of 425,000 square feet and about 2,981 seats. Now, to give you some correlation, today, the schools that are operating, we have about 4.4 million square feet of space. So we've eliminated about 10% of our space today since 2005. When we looked into the report, Subcommittee 1, which remember was our baseline, their recommendation was to stay as we've done with the 4 recently constructed schools. It gave us the ability to customize those schools to the programs each school wanted to have, so it wasn't going to be cookie cutter. We could have modifications and changes depending on what the objectives of the school were, and to make it tied to community-based. We've talked about having community-based schools, but in a lot of cases, our new schools today don't work for community-based because of more construction-related issues and ingress and egress out of the buildings. And so it becomes more of a hindrance than it becomes an asset. Long term, we want it to become an asset. The community survey that we did, which you will find that was done by K-12 as well as Subcommittee 3, you will find in this particular, I've just picked some samples, in tab number, I think it's 2 of the book is the detailed questionnaire. But what we found was what we saw from the facilities tour and what we've observed in actual operations of our facilities. We have an old school system. Okay? The majority of our schools are older than 20 years. 82% of all our schools are older than 20 years old. 1/3 of our 44 schools are older than 70 years old. Another third are older than 50 years old. These schools weren't built to last that period of time. And they're going to continue to age. Some of the things we saw, the question was how would you rate the overall quality? And you see 70% rated as fair to poor. How would you rate RPS facilities with the surrounding divisions? 74% rated as fair to poor. The environment, 61% rated as fair to poor. Space for school activities, 67% fair to poor. In technology, 69% rated as fair to poor. Our exterior appearances, we came in at 59% fair to poor. Safety and security, 63%. Appearance and functionality of the classroom, 61%. Athletic facilities were 59%. However, 22% of the respondents did not answer that question on athletics. So that's, even though it's low, it's probably not a fair representation of what the true feelings were because they didn't know our athletic facilities. The adequacy and functionality of our supporting systems, 58% rated as fair to poor. Our equipment and furniture, 68% fair to poor. Overall, how would you rate the facilities of your school? 60% rated as fair to poor. How do the facilities at your school impact the learning environment? And 46% said they were unfavorably to very unfavorably. So what's it tell us? What it tells us from the committee standpoint is that we have old buildings, and those old buildings are having an impact on the educational quality that the students of Ridgewood Public Schools receive each and every day. That educational quality is impacted because windows leak, so there's not adequate heating and cooling inside of a building. The impact of learning because you have technology that doesn't work, not because the system hasn't invested into equipment, but a significant part of technology is the amount of electricity that comes into a building. If the building hasn't been upgraded in numbers of years, the power coming in cannot handle the new equipment that's there today. I don't care how much equipment you put in place. It's still not going to give you technology at the level you need. And what are we doing today? We're doing more standardized testing on using computers than we've ever done before. So our children are at a disadvantage on the technology. How would you go about fixing the problem? We asked 3 questions. The first one was consolidate the current schools. And on that, we had 49% either they strongly support or just supported this option. On renovating, which was the next option, 84% either strongly supported it or supported. And build new, 76% were strongly or to support that option. What's that say? What most communities say? I want community schools, I like small schools, and I want to keep everything the way it is today. That's what all communities like to hear. Okay? But If we stay with what we have, then the results will stay the same as far as our operating costs per student and the challenges that as a district we have from just a pure facility operations standpoint, it won't change. So, with that, the next part of our task is we looked and said, if we made everything equal, and this is the same data we just talked about, if we made everything equal today, this is the age of our buildings. Tab 6 in your booklet has the construction schedule. And you'll see that we've calculated what it would cost to do that, and we'll talk about that in a second. When we looked at each facility, the different categories we went down, some of our schools didn't need to do any work. Other of our schools needed to do complete renovation or replacement, major renovations, and these are all fairly self-explanatory. In tab 6, it also is a detailed explanation of the criteria we used in that computation. In the complete and major category, 23 schools of the 44 fell in that category. The moderate renovation, minor renovation, then we looked at which schools could do additions, then we looked at the upgrade to technology, the upgrade to the furniture package, and athletics, all were considered when we said it's an equal school. And remember, the comparison was the two elementaries are Oak Grove and Broad Rock, the middle school is MLK, and the high school was Huguenot. That was the standard, and that's what we tried to make. Now, not every school can do that. We have one elementary school that sits on a 3-acre tract of land. I can do some things to that building, but I can't address parking. I can't address a bus load. I can't put athletic facilities on it. There's no footprint there. So to the extent that we can make it equal, we did. Okay? But not every building can do that. Breaking it down, we have in a complete renovation and replace 12 schools, the major renovations 11, moderate 6, minor is 7, and 8 of the schools we had was 8. Of our 44 schools, we have 14, with 12 being in the elementary category, that we can actually do additions at. The rest of our schools are not set up to easily situate and do additions. On the equalization, on the long-term side, it's good. However, this work can't be done very quickly. It's really not a viable option for these reasons. One, the cost is significant. And when we get into the options, we'll talk about that. Two, we would need to do a major rezone to meet the projected growth that's taking place. And you'll see that when we bring it to the schools. Three, we would need to incur additional costs for additions, which will create empty seats. Because all we're doing under an equalization is we're taking all the existing schools, keeping it, bringing them up to a level, and then, as you'll see when we talk at the school side, and where the growth's taking place at those schools, I'll be bringing in additions, which will create more empty seats, not less empty seats. And this particular option, the equalization, creates no operational efficiency. It keeps us just where we're at today. And that is an option, but it doesn't change anything. From an enrollment side, it's very interesting. When we did this enrollment, we've used Dr. McKibben behind it. We use the cohort component method of population forecasting. A cohort component forecast refers to the future population that basically is expected to occur because of all the factors that you can think of. Those factors are going to be primarily women of childbearing age and how many children are going to be born. This forecast also factors in where are real estate developments going to take place, where's revitalization going to take place, where something may be lost because of a change in it. It tries to take every variable that's known to man and put it into the equation and come up with a truly accurate forecast. But again, today, a forecast is still a guess. To do that, here's some of the things we use. We started off with the 2010 census, and that's our base year population. We looked at a set of age-specific fertility rates for the districts and its attendance areas. We looked at a set of age-specific survival mortality rates for the district and its attendance areas. We looked at the historical enrollment figures by grade. Through that, this shows you today we're at 22,488 total enrollment in our K-12, pre-K through 12. The capacity is 27,673, and you see that it's growing up to 23,820 here, and in actually 2024-25, it's 23,875 students, an increase of 1,392 students, or 6.19% over the next 10 years. If you looked at 2007 actually said our enrollment was going to be flat. Now, the two basic things that have occurred, and Dr. McKim, I'm just getting to the shortcut version of it. One, to replace the students who leave our system just upon graduation, we need 2.1 students coming in from a birth standpoint. We historically run at 1.9. Today we're running at 2.8. The other thing is, traditionally, more people at childbearing age leave Richmond than come into Richmond. And while it's still a negative, the gap has gotten much, much smaller. So as a result of that, we see an increase in the amount of students that are inside our system going forward. On the elementary side, you can see we've got 12,218. We're going to grow to 12,393, an increase of 175 students from 1.43%. Now, if you look at that, you looked at where we were in utilization, and the easiest thing to say is, we don't need anything new on the elementary side, just stay where you're at, but that's not the case. On the south side, which we use the river, you can see the growth from 6,301 students to 6,589. There's 12 elementary schools south of the river. We're going to exceed that capacity, and you think by looking at that, that's just all the schools. Well, here's a map. This particular map shows, for example, at Fisher, 80.4. So that's the amount of space that students are using of the maximum functional capacity of that building. Southampton at 78. Here's Broad Rock at 127. Reed at 96.7. And that's today. In 5 years, look at the shade. Miles Jones is over 100%. Reed continues to be at 100%. Broad Rock goes to 153. France is 103. Green's 159%. And in 10 years, it drops a little bit at Jones, but it's 96.8. Reed's up to 107. Broad Rock, 147, basically flat. Francis grew a little bit to 106. Green continues to grow at 158%. The point is, of those 12 elementary schools, 7 are at capacity. 5 of the elementary schools have capacity. So you say, well, the easiest solution is let's rezone and just put those students in this swath of elementary schools. That sounds great in theory, but those schools don't have enough empty seats to accommodate the other schools which have the growth. The second problem that occurs, or the second solution is, let's take some of these students and let's go north of the river. So let's look at what's north. North has capacity, 6,980 seats. We're at 5,917, and we're going to actually decrease to 5,804. Building utilization is 84%, decreasing to 83% in the next 10 years. The north has seats. Well, when we look at that, remember Fisher and Southampton right here, they both have capacity. So we could use those seats, or we could rezone those schools, bring them to the north, and take some of what was further down here and bring them up there. Now think about what that just did. Transportation costs would be huge. Students would be on buses. Today with Elkhart, an Elkhart student today is on a bus 30 to 45 minutes more than they were before the closure. That would happen to these elementary students. So the operating costs are going to be significantly higher. The second thing it's going to do, it's going to impact the community and schools concept, because we're going to be busing children well past their intended living areas. The north continues to actually decline. Fox is up at 100%, but Munford's right at 102. We can handle that. And all these other schools are well below 100% mark. And in 10 years, which that was this. Overall, here's what it looks like today, and you can see the challenge. This is a swap. We can take them and go north, but then all these other schools, if we rezoned it, we're going to go past these schools and try to fill it into this. It just doesn't work operationally. It doesn't work from a logical standpoint. Middle school. Overall, middle schools are at a small growth. That looks good, and we have capacity. However, when I break it down between north and south, the south middle school shows the exact same picture that we saw previously with the elementary. Some capacity here, this is today. Next 3 years we're going up, and all of a sudden we're well above it. And that really ties to two particular schools. This is today Elkhart, which is over here in Clark Springs, but Elkhart's at 87%, Rushall's sitting at 70%, Thompson's sitting at 54%. In 5 years, Elkhart now goes from 80+% to 104%. Rushall is up to 98%. Thompson still sits, it was at 54, it's actually down to 52%. In 10 years, Elkhart continues to grow, Rushall continues to grow, Thompson's basically flat. So the growth is taking place in this area of the South, which is consistent on the elementary, because that's where Broad Rock, Green, Francis, Reed, Red are all located. The North Middle Schools is flat. Small growth, but you can see they've got a substantial amount of capacity. Today, I don't have anybody that's in the dark color that's close to 85% utilization. Well, MLK's at 92%. In 5 years, MLK stays flat. Hill starts to grow a little bit over the next 5 years. And in 10 years, Hill will be in excess of 100%. Henderson at 55, MLK still high, and 44% sitting at Penford. So the north is basically taken care of, but it has empty seats. High schools, we've got capacity of 6,391. We're basically going to have small growth from 4,900 to 5,400. Our growth there is going to take place in the south, as you can see. The north actually dips and then kind of levels off. And here's a map that shows you the high school as it is today, what it'll look like in 5 years as it gets darker at Huguenot and Whip, and then Huguenot and Whip both will stay over 100%. The specialty schools, here's their enrollment. There's a capacity of 2,372. So you remember the schedule that I showed, the 5,100 seats, 1,300 of those seats that are empty come from those specialty schools. What we used in evaluating the different options we had, we looked at the building capacity, and we did. We looked at each individual building. We evaluated the building condition, as you've seen the assessment that took place, and then we looked at the projected enrollment to see if that building could handle the enrollment that was taking place. From subcommittee number 2, we looked at the real estate market. So now we've taken the other factors and are going to adjust what the historical and the projected numbers tell us. We looked at the revitalization plans and programs that are taking place inside the city, because schools are significantly tied to those particular programs. We looked at the demographics and how the demographics are changing inside each area of the city. We looked at what programs were in place and how they would impact as far as retaining families and what they would do to the enrollments that would take place. And then we looked at the areas of the city where historically people didn't lend the money that they should have in those areas at the rates they should have done. And now today there's significant opportunities as those are being corrected for some real estate plays. And if people go to those particular areas, there'll be some significant growth that could take place. The findings of subcommittee 2, positive viewed schools, that if a school is thought of well, then it's going to have a direct impact on higher housing values inside that neighborhood. The revitalization areas, some of the areas we saw was the Blackwell, Swansboro, Wythe, Miles Jones area, the Stewart community, Overby Shepherd, the Carver, Bedford, and Open, and Mason, MLK, Bellevue, and Shimrazzo. The demographic shifts we saw was in the Overby Shepherd, Stewart, Swansboro, and Holton areas. The Fisher, Southampton zones could see an increase in the amount of student-age children due to a change in home ownership. Shimrazzo, Southampton, and Westover Hills are areas of higher than expected single-family home sales this year. We haven't factored that necessarily into our projections, but it's something that could indicate a change in the demographics of those particular communities. And ultimately, our biggest goal from Subcommittee 2 is what can we do to retain the families? Is have every child that's eligible to go to Richmond Public Schools go attend Richmond Public Schools. You can see some of the different programs that we looked at and divide where they're at in relationship to each of the individual schools, and we factored that into where we saw our projected enrollment. We looked at from the investment grade standpoint, and you can see where the real estate opportunities will be going forward. And so now we get down to our options. How do we go about addressing what our needs are? Well, when we did this, we used this model, and it's a very simple model. You can see the simple to complex and the no cost to high cost. And these are actually tools that are in the toolbox of the school board and the administration to address the issue. So you can change the capacity through the program. Changing programs could add or change the amount of capacity that's in a school. How the room gets used. Use of portables or relocatable units. Setting caps on enrollment, annexing or redistricting. All of these are things that have a significant impact on communities, but from a cost standpoint and from an actual doing it quickly are fairly easy to do. Now we get into the next sections as we start buying additional rooms, we do renovations, do permanent additions, and ultimately build new schools. Those were the tools that we used. Option 1 basically said, we're not going to do anything. We're going to stay just the way we are. So we're not going to have any new schools, we're not going to do any renovations, we're not going to do any rezoning. When we do that, the old buildings and the systems are going to remain in place. Nothing's going to change. And we wouldn't expect anything to change. Our CIP amount is going to be high, and it's continued to be high. Okay? Things are old, things are going to fail. It's going to happen. Our operating costs are going to continue to be high. We're higher than our surrounding similar areas like Norfolk. We will continue to be high. It's not going to change. Portables are going to be used to address the increasing student population. So we're Broad Rock, Oak Grove, Green, Francis. They'll have portables. There's 200 new students showing up there next year. On September 8th, 147 days from today, calendar days, 200 new students are going to show up at schools that there's no capacity. There's no place to house those students. So we'll be putting them in portables at a cost of $1.2 million. And that, there's no return on that investment. Overall, option 1 is not a viable option because we're not addressing the issue. All we've done is put our head in the sand. Option 2 says let's rezone our way out of the issue. Now remember, rezoning is a tool, but it doesn't address our issue. It's going to significantly impact the concept of schools being the centers of the community. You saw that in just the discussion about the South elementary schools and where they could go in relationship to the north. It's going to significantly increase the operating cost because of the transportation involved. It's going to have an impact on the quality of education because students are on buses significantly longer. We're going to continue to have old building and systems. Our operating costs are going to be high. Our CIP amounts are going to continue to be high. And overall, we don't see that as a viable option. Option 3, this was the equalization of the schools. We don't believe that's a viable option because it continues to have a high operating costs. We haven't changed anything. We haven't lowered our seat count. We haven't consolidated schools. We still have small schools, and small schools cost more money to operate. It doesn't address the capacity issue, so we're going to be bringing portables in. It doesn't generate the efficiencies, and at the end of the day, it's a very expensive option. To equalize all the facilities inside the Richmond Public School Systems is $645 million on today's dollars. Okay? That's today. Obviously, you can't do all of them today. So if we were to do it over time, obviously they have to factor in an inflation factor, which at $645 million, the cost will go up substantially. Just at 2-3% a year, it will significantly grow. And over time, depending on the timeline one uses, it could hit $1 billion that would be spent. Option 4 was our approach to say, what was the shock treatment? If we had to do something very quickly, what could be done and done with kind of low monetary input? Well, we can establish pre-K centers for all our pre-K programs. Right now in our elementary schools, we have 49 classrooms that house pre-K. However, before we all go say it's great, 49 classrooms, that's a lot of students you can put in. When you have Broad Rock, which is sitting at 130% occupancy, they have 0 pre-K classes in their school. So that didn't help Broad Rock. In other schools, we have anywhere from 1 to 4 classrooms, and that's it. So they're scattered throughout the system inside our elementary schools. We can rezone elementary schools to address some of our issues. We can consolidate 4 of our elementary schools into 2 existing locations. We can consolidate an elementary school into an existing school today with a small addition. We could consolidate 2 middle schools into 1 existing location. We could consolidate 1 high school. We can consolidate 4 secondary schools into 2 existing locations. We can move to a full-time CTE program center. All of these options could be implemented fairly quickly, like in 0 to 24 months. However, we don't believe that's a viable option. The option that we recommend is option number 5. We'll evaluate the establishment of the pre-K centers because as schools are consolidated together, as we free up seats, we would create universal pre-K centers. And there's a lot to support from an educational standpoint, having pre-K students in 1 building with just pre-K students and not in a K through 5 setting. Rezone to address some of the capacity issues where we don't have to do any additions or indoor renovations. Consolidate 2 elementary schools, and this program would be done over a 10 to 15 year period of time. I've got it where it could be done over 15 years today. Consolidate 1 elementary school into an existing with an addition, which you saw under option 4. Combine the 4 elementary schools into 2 new elementary schools. So you're seeing renovations and you're seeing new. Combine 3 elementary schools into 1 new elementary school and have 1 school renovated with an addition to it. Build 1 new elementary school, which results in another school being closed. Rezone so there's an equitable split in the south. And then all the other schools that remain would have their renovations done too. In the secondary side of this, we would consolidate 4 middles into 2 new middle schools, consolidate the 1 high school, construct a new high school to address the increase in the projections, consolidate 4 secondary schools into 2 existing locations, and then renovations to the remaining buildings. Now, the cost, as you recall, the equalization, which added no new seats, which didn't address the projections and the growth that's getting ready to take place, was $645 million. This option, which is building new schools, which is renovating schools, making additions to schools, closing schools, creating efficiencies, doing all the things that we've talked about doing as a system, costs $620 million. So it's actually $25 million less, but it's still a rather large number. And it's something that's not going to happen overnight. Okay? Now, let's get down to a lot of data got shown tonight. And believe me, the more you look at it, the more different options you can come up with. Okay? I can do it. I mean, I can give you a different option that literally thought about an hour ago. There's always things you can do, but there's a domino effect every time that you got to be careful about. But these are, let's talk about what our issues we have. We've got growth that's taking place in the south of the elementary with 7 of the 12 schools. That's real. That's here in 147 calendar days. It's not going to happen 2 years from now. It's going to happen come September 8th of 2015. The middle school has growth. If you remember when we looked at the South Middle School in 3 years, we started exceeding their capacity of all the schools in the South. And that's going to continue to grow. Our buildings are going to continue to be old. 82% are older than 20 years. Guess what? They're going to continue to age. And that percentage will get higher. The age will get older. And of the 23 to 44 schools that need a complete renovation, replacement, or major renovation, as we continue to delay doing that work, the buildings will only get worse. It's not going to get better. It can't. Okay? So, what's our next steps? Our next step will be start work with subcommittee number 4 and look at how we can pay for this. Some of the things: public-private partnerships, performance contractors, set up creations of 6320 entities so you can do some of the debt financing here. But at the end of the day, one thing to keep in mind: no matter how we do it, the debt still has to be repaid. There's no free money. Not at the numbers we're talking about, and even at $1, it's not free money. So it's a large number, and it's something that's not easy to figure out where those dollars are going to come from. So, while everybody heard 645 and 620, and that'll be, everybody will walk out of here. Understand this. This plan is something that will take 10 to 20 years to implement. It is not going to happen overnight. And even if the check was given to me tonight, it would still take 10 to 20 years to do it. So it's not about having the money and the money fixes the problem. That is not the answer. It takes time to do this and do it well. We will continue to refine our timeline of the projects and what its impact will be to the district's CIP and annual maintenance needs. Now, going forward, from a facility standpoint, we know that some of these things will occur. So obviously, when we look at our CIP, we will not be spending large sums of money in schools that may not be here in the next 1, 2, or 3 years. It doesn't make economic sense. We'll do the things necessary to ensure the safety and security of our students in those buildings, But doing long-term investments where it's going to take 10, 15, 20 years to get a payback on that investment, we can't do. So we'll match where we think we're heading to with where our dollars get spent from a CIP. So we're not wasting those dollars is the point that I'm making here. The other things we're going to do is we'll be seeking board approval for the recommended action to address the immediate elementary student growth in the South. That's going to be portables. There's no option that I have there. In 2015-16, that's 9 portables. In 2016-17, that's an addition of 13 more portables. And that's minimum. That's 22 portables. The annual cost, and this is leasing, $1.2 million in year 1, year 2 is $2.3 million. If we were to purchase those portables, which I'm not recommending because then they become permanent, that cost in year 2, instead of being 2.3, would be about 1.3. Number 2, we're going to recommend and get a board approval to move forward with Elkhart going to Thompson from Clark Springs. Now, Elkhart can go to Thompson, and it's fine for 2 years. But come year 3, we significantly exceed the capacity of Thompson, and in year 4, we're off the charts. Okay? So, we're going to seek the school board approval to construct a new middle school and elementary school in the 2 areas south of the river. An elementary school will take 18 months start to finish. So that's from the design work to when we actually open the school. A middle school takes 24 months. Now, Elkhart, if we were to repair it and bring it back to its current state, it's 24 months. If we were to renovate it and make it equal, it's 24 months. Neither one of those options are viable because it doesn't address the projected growth that's going to occur at Elkhart in the next 10 years. And it's consistent with what we saw in the elementary schools. So we believe the best recommendation is to construct a 1,500-seat middle school and a 1,000-seat elementary school. We will also seek school board approval to do the rezoning because some of our issues can be addressed through rezoning. And we'll seek school board approval to do the renovation and addition at one of our schools south of the river that could ultimately result in a combination of 2 schools into 1. Any questions? And I'm tired of talking about all this. Ma'am? That's fine. Now, Mr. Bourne, 720. That's not bad. Huh? How was that? Okay. You need to go. Do you two have both? Does he have both? Kim.
Thank you, Mr. Kranz. Before we get into questions and discussions, I'd like to just offer an opportunity to our 2 co-chairmen to offer thoughts or words if they want to.
Thanks, Mr. Bourne. I just wanted to take a minute to have anybody in the audience who was part of the facilities task force involved in any way, if you could all stand up. So we had quite a few people that were involved, at least 30 people, community members, members of Richmond Public School staff, experts, engineers, architects, city planners, and it was just an amazing effort, and a lot of folks put a ton of time and expertise. We toured a lot of schools. We spent time in boiler rooms, and I think it was just great for everybody to really be hands-on and see it and feel it and know that this is what's going on in our schools, and that was kind of the foundation for how to move forward. And we had, the Realtors Association gave us a lot of data, which was super helpful, and Mr. Krantz found a lot of other industry data. And then Mr. Krantz, I also wanted to thank you because, we all love binders with thousands of pages of data in it. Thanks for working over spring break and pulling it all together in a really organized way. This is a lot of information, but I think that the presentation really spelled out what we're trying to do, where we've been, and where we're going. And overall, I'm just really hopeful. A year ago, we were in a major crisis situation. I think we had just moved the kids from Fairfield, and we're dealing with that. I knew we had this crisis, but I didn't feel real hopeful about how we were going to get out of it. And that's about the same time you came in, and Dr. Button was new, and we're all kind of looking at each other like, how are we going to get out of this hole? And so I think that the last year, all this community work and looking at the past reports that have been on the shelf, some of the recommendations have been put in place, but not enough. I just think this is the right time, this is the right plan, and next steps are just having those important conversations with the other city leaders to make this all happen. And we're going to continue to need the support of everybody here tonight to make that happen. So thank you.
Thank you, but it's everybody on that committee and all the leaders that put this together. Thanks,
Graham. Do you have 3 minutes?
Sure. I want to ditto everything Kristen said. Also, just to stress that we are still in a crisis. We have any day, any school could go down mechanically. And we have to dig ourselves out of this crisis for our children and for the future of the city. So it's a doable plan. It's costly, but I think it's more costly not to do anything. And I think that the city is primed for greatness if we can fix our schools and really equalize it. The disparities are heart-wrenching when we go into school buildings and, children in one zip code are going to brand new buildings, state-of-the-art, and other zip codes, mold and ceiling tiles falling on their heads. So I thank you for all the work you've done since you've gotten here to try to remedy and fix a lot of the immediate issues, but we are in a position where we really don't have any option but to move forward with this plan if we want to do the right thing for children in the city of Richmond.
The board members, questions, comments? Sarah Muhammad.
I just wanted to take this opportunity to thank the task force for their work, their dedication, and Mr. Krantz and his team for putting this information together. It's much needed, and I just hope that we will be diligent and mindful in moving forward with the completion of the rezoning that we have done in parts. And I think that will help us continue to move forward as we need to, instead of having just a section of rezoning done, but all levels of rezoning done. So thank you all so very much.
Questions? Mr.
The other options, Mr. Krantz, I presume have estimated price tags as well. Is that something that will be rolled out tonight or at later meetings?
We didn't, on options 1, 2, and 4, we didn't put a $1 to it because option 1 and 2 wouldn't have $1. Basically, we're just going to do it either with nothing or through a rezoning type process. Option 1 would see the portables as well as in option 2. That will bring in 9 this year and then 13 the additional year. The middle schools, when we get into year 3 and year 4, we didn't project that on the portable side, but under option 1, we'll start bringing in portables. The challenge will be with Elkhart going to Thompson is that Thompson's not really set up for portables. So that will be a challenge, to do something on the back end of that school, that fits that campus. And the elementary schools will get to a point that we'll have portable farms because of where the growth's taking place.
Do you have a general ballpark number of the cost of option?
Well, a portable, I can get that to you. I'll just do that. I can get that.
In option 4, establish pre-K centers for all pre-K programs. Does that mean building new buildings or?
No, the thought there is for example, one of the scenarios has an existing elementary school with a recommendation to do a renovation/addition to it. That would allow an existing school that is significantly underutilizing the space that it has. That school could then be converted into potentially a pre-K center. So we could be creating additional pre-K seats and at the same time free up in some of our schools, some of the classrooms that are using pre-K classrooms and put all the pre-K students in one location. Other options that are available on the pre-K side is one of the things is that there's a great need for pre-K inside our system, particularly south of the river. Today, all of our locations are north. So there's a strong need for us to find a way to create pre-K sites south of the river. So that would create an existing building. The second thing would be take some of the shuttered buildings, and we've looked at those, and possibly reopening those. But then we start talking about investments of $2 to $4 million per building. And is that, with some of the challenges we have, is that the best use of that dollar from an investment standpoint? We're looking at using third-party sites. There's some available sites that have been used for schools in the past that could be ideal for pre-K, and we're evaluating that. So one of our major goals is to find ways to create more pre-K seats, particularly south of the river. And so the pre-K centers fit that option, that objective.
Seeing no other questions, Mr. Krantz, I just want to echo every single one of my colleagues. Thanks to you, to the committee, to anyone who participated in the meetings. This issue, much like our academic improvement plan, I believe is central to the future success of Richmond Public Schools. It gives us a really good baseline data. It's the first, most important step towards maximizing the efficiency and effectiveness of our school system from a capital needs perspective. I was glad to hear Mr. Sturdivant inquire about option 4 and the price tag. I think what appeals to me most about that is it uses what we have, and it also is the one that we could implement the quickest, because I think that some of our challenges are in that box, and when I say, you'll know what I mean. They're important and they're urgent, and so that is very appealing to me as a board member. Again, I think this document, the recommendations, are putting front and center some of our most critical needs in Richmond Public Schools, and I think now is the time for us as a board to speak with a unified voice and, for lack of a better phrase, force an important and likely difficult decision about what are the priorities for our city when it comes to public education. And so I look forward to having that conversation and helping drive that conversation in a way that promotes academic excellence and structurally sound, healthy learning environments for our students. So thank you for all the hard work that you've done, and thank you in advance for all the hard work that you will do. Any other questions, comments, Dr. Bedden?
The thing I would close out with is just a reminder, board, that I shared earlier in the week, that as part of this facility issue, we know with the merger of Thompson and Elkhart, we recently were informed that that school has the potential ability to be reopened on a new school number. So we will be pursuing that, but it also means that we will have to own more of the cost and success again locally, because the merger will, for one school, reduce its SIG money or access potentially to SIG money, but it will potentially be a restart for the school as a whole with accountability system. And we'll be moving forward to try to file that paperwork and complete the requirements. That was one of the concerns of the parents of this merger. And we were just informed that in this particular case, because of the circumstances and some other factors, have the ability for us to apply to BDOE to be able to restart as a school.
I only heard part of that, Dr. Batten, but the part that I did hear was new school number if you combine Thompson and Elkhart.
Correct.
And then the part that I was not clear on is about the SIG money. Both schools will lose?
No, just we would be, if I remember correctly, just both? Yes, both.
Both schools will
Yes.
lose their SIG money, right?
Correct.
Ms. Kane?
Because effectively it would be a new school.
Oh, Ms. Garland, I'm sorry. I didn't see you, Ms. Garland. I'm sorry.
But those schools would lose their SIG funding as of the closure date, which is projected to be approximately June 30th.
Sure. So the new school that will come out of both schools, and this is either from Ms. Garland or Dr. Batten, could we assume that that new school will receive SIG money?
No.
No, we can't make that assumption.
Because it would not be at that level in the accountability system to
Because
proceed.
that's right,
It
because
would
it's
no
a new
longer be
school, so they will have to be in it
designated
for a
school.
year. Yes, ma'am. Okay, thank you, Ms. Garland. So I'm sorry, one more thing popped in my head, I'm sorry.
Yes, sir.
So they would be required to meet all of the benchmarks set by the state, even though they combine in whatever year they start. They don't get a year waiver from that. Okay. You start fresh. You start fresh, okay.
Yes. Further questions, comments, and concerns? Well, there's got to be something that can allow me to be chair for a little while. I forgot how good it felt to sit here. Do we need a recess? Well, thank you, Mr. Krantz. Thanks for everybody who came out. Again, for those that are engaged in this, please continue to stand with us as we have this conversation and encourage all of our partners to work together towards a common goal of, as Dr. Bedden says, building a better district. And this meeting now stands adjourned.
Mr. Gardner, can you report to the auditorium, please, Mr.